All right, everybody. So this little talk is going to look at VR, XR, immersive media, especially through that fully immersive form, and what we dreamed, or what I dreamed especially, they might bring us and where we might be along that path to realizing that dream. This dream started early on, back in those mystical times when computers themselves were starting to change the world. Suddenly, some of us realized that these machines could generate new realities which could be fully immersive to us, that we could live in, we could exist in, just like a parallel reality. What a sea change. We had entered a new phase of human capabilities enabled by these magical machines. We now had near godlike powers to create our own realities, irregardless of any real-world constraints, like physics or locomotion or point of view. We could imaginate our visions into a livable reality. It was slow going at first. The gear was primarily accessible to those at well-funded technical institutions, not so much accessible to the creatives. However, in the last 15 years or so, the costs have come down, the tech has become more reasonable, and we should be living the dream, right? Instead, it seems like every other month since VR was democratized by the release of the Oculus Rift, we are subject to headlines like this. Well, I'm of the opinion, of course, that it is decidedly not dead, but it's still rather uncomfortable and unwieldy, just as it's ever been, and more importantly, not yet utilized by large numbers of people. So here's some statistics. Last year, 9.6 million headsets were shipped, and Meta had about 2/3 of those sales. And overall, since Oculus emerged on the scene, an estimated 51 million headsets of all kinds have been sold worldwide, according to some reports. This shows about a 10% growth each year for the last 5 years. However, it looks like there are really only about 6 to 7 million consistent players, and we say players because most of the stats we have are for gamers, who are 75 to 80% of the market. And unsurprisingly, most of those are male. Retention and repeated usage to VR experiences are poor for the majority of headset owners. Lots of that gear is just gathering dust on the shelf. And why? Well, affordability for a critical mass of people is still an issue. We expect, unrealistically, that VR appeals to everyone. And for as many people who see the light in their first VR experience, there are still many bad first experiences. The hardware is clunky and not adaptable to the varieties of humans we have. One size fits all, right. And it changes too often, making the interfaces and stability an issue. Many people still get sick from their lag or bad design, and this all leads to those bad first impressions. And when we look at content, we see even more issues. First, there's a decided lack of good content. Most of it is mid-level, repurposed, derivative of other media, gimmicky, or just a tech demo. I call this mehware. And because it is a medium still in development, we have unclear genres, poor aesthetics, the user interface is always a kludge, and VR interfaces make people feel stupid, me included. They need to be more intuitive. Single-player offerings do not encourage repeat visits, and social offerings may, but there are still issues with those, like unwanted interactions and trust. These things, these pain points, make it difficult to realize the immersive dream. So let's step back a bit and talk about what exactly the immersive dream might be, at least for me. It's probably different for each of you in this industry. For some, it might be having a financially successful company. For others, being able to play the coolest games and adventures while immersed in them. For others, being able to socialize with people in having meaningful encounters. For some, just having interesting, thought-provoking, or mind-blowing experiences, or just having fun. For me, the dream of immersive media involves being at the forefront of the birth of a new art form, one unlike any that has gone before, and that's not exactly our direct experience of living. It's a dream to watch it unfold, and more importantly, to help it become what it could become. This new medium has a latent power, a potential to become not only immersive and embodied, but alive and effective, as much as our physical existence. And beyond that, to be exceptionally meaningful and impactful. For me, the dream that is immersive media becomes integrated and is when it becomes integrated and purposeful and meaningful within our everyday human condition. I see this new art form as being important to many, many fields that inform humankind's stance and interactions along this journey of living. These include health and wellness, including mental health, physical health, recovery, and revitalization. They include training and education and understanding, and also aesthetics, new perspectives, awe, and joy. And beyond that, could this new medium actually be a turning point in our evolution as humanity? And if so, what would it take to make that happen? The studies that have been done on fully immersive media in the last few decades have shown that over and over there is something unique and special about it. It affects us as much as our real-life experiences. We have only replaced our normal sensory inputs for those that we can create ourselves, and our brain accepts them. At the same time, neuroscience is revealing much about the ways in which the brain works. And far from being a baked set of responses to stimuli, it is a living, ever-changing mechanism by which we interact with the world, even those worlds we create ourselves. What does this mean? Well, I always say we may have underestimated the brain's plasticity and the ways that immersive media can unlock it. What will it take to reach this dream? Any part of it? Well, first of all, we need to work more to minimize some of those pain points we looked at. But more importantly, we need to figure out what makes a good immersive experience. And then we need to build up the vocabulary and invent more techniques that help make this an impactful medium. Right now, we don't really know how to tell or how to determine a good immersive experience from a mediocre one. Of course, the main criteria is, did it work for you? We know personally if we liked it or not, but what does that mean? Was it enjoyable? Was it meaningful or memorable? Did it affect your well-being in a positive way or maybe a negative one? Did it help you understand something? Did it release good endorphins? That's a good one. Did it make you happier or wiser? These are all sorts of personal metrics, and some of them are even measurable. When I was a photographer for many years and a student of photography, people would ask, what makes a good photograph? And someone might say, well, it's really captured the shadows and the highlights, or it's technically printed very well, and so on. But that's not what makes a good photograph. A photograph is successful when the experience of seeing that photograph is more than the experience of having been when and where that photo was taken. In other words, when the photograph as an object transcends the subject matter. I don't want a photograph I poured my creative spirit into to simply be a secondary record of something that's really special in person, like going to the Grand Canyon. There's something in a good photograph that gives you beyond the subject matter, the technical achievement. And I think that's got to be the same in immersive media. This is where the work transcends the subject matter and becomes its own experience. So can we apply this line of reasoning to immersive media? The answer is yes and no. Because it's a lived experience, it's a bit more complicated than just a photograph. Let's ask this question. What do we mean by quality? Quality, of course, has many aspects. It can be technical and quantitative, like how much resolution is there, what's the frame rate. But it can also be qualitative, which includes aspects like emotions, authenticity, resonance, connection, meaning, things that are harder to pin down because they can be different for each person having that experience. We see more quality in an experience that is meaningful to us in some ways. And in the end, quality ultimately depends on what we need, what we want as humans. Let's look at some things that immersive media does well and what makes it unique. Here's a short but not exhaustive list. In placement, when you're in an immersive space, there are fewer distractions. The physical world is mostly shut out. This is a luxury that VR gives. Embodiment. We use our entire body as the interface to the virtual space through the tracking of where we are, where we're looking, and what we touch. It's a lived experience, As an experiential medium, it's not just necessarily for storytelling. Those stories may come after you have finished your experience when you talk about it. We can create liminal spaces because we aren't limited by the real world. We have agency and choices if they're designed in. If the only agency you have is waiting for something to happen, you have no agency. Immersive media can also provide exploration and other sensations of time. I think the magic happens in VR when you forget about time and when you suddenly realize you're existing on a different level. This is part of what's called presence, and getting to that state of presence is to access pure magic. So, how can we make immersive media richer? What are some ways? Well, first of all, let's stop thinking about users. We are participants, not viewers, not an audience. We are also not consumers. In the best VR, we are co-creators, if we are given the space and opportunity to do that. When you watch a movie, it's pretty much all done for you before you come to it. Every cut, every syllable, it's all been authored ahead for you. So there's no way you can expand on that, with the exception of maybe talking about it with others afterwards. We're not consumers just enriching someone else's bottom line. Where is our imagination in an experiential world? Let's leave plenty of room for that. Immersive media can be that space where your imagination comes in. The creator doesn't have to have painted the whole picture and can give opportunities for the participant to bring something of themselves to it. And the artistry in immersive media is, though you may have an idea of what you want to accomplish, you give the freedom to the participant. You let them complete it. And I contend that the best VR is not complete until a participant has gone through that experience and contributed to it in some way that makes it their own. So how do you do that? How do you design something that guides the participant but isn't too pushy? It's very different than being the auteur who's telling a full story. And we need more examples of this. I don't know, can anybody think of any where you're guided and not kind of given the whole thing in advance? So the other thing is, I ask, is that experience designed to give us lasting memories? Does it give us ways to help make sense of the experience we've just had? How else can we make immersive media richer? We've had some really cool immersive works today, but most operate with the barest capabilities that are possible. They could have so much more. We use and borrow all sorts of techniques taken from other disciplines and areas like psychology, theater, and theme park design. And these current techniques, when used well, can bring the power of a good immersive experience to life. Creators are starting to amass a set of good tools that underpin this medium's vocabulary. I don't have time to go into them all, but we must be open to expanding even those things we have in our immersive palette. We can change our perspective on what immersive media should be. A good experience moves something in people, and it's not always about what you see. It's kind of like the photograph example. There's some information exchange that happens at a deeper level than our sensory perceptions. And I think that's what immersive media is falling short on today. So what's missing from the virtual experience that we can have in a physical one? Can we develop techniques to include such things, those omissions? Or can we still just quest, kind of pun intended, after high-resolution frame rate and things like that while ignoring the more subtle things that humans can catch? What if we stop focusing on the tech and start focusing on what the immersive experience feels like? Because when it's done right, you don't think about the headset, you don't think about anything but that lived experience and that connection that you have. So if we take something from our real world, like as an example, like forest bathing, Shirin-yoku, this translates as taking in the forest atmosphere. Now, if you go into a special space like a forest, something gets moved in people. The space provides stimulation of our human senses, our vision's surrounded by lush scenery, the vegetation releases aromas and oxygen and negative ions. We hear the leaves rustling and the birds singing and the running streams in the distance. Touching elements within the forest like the bark, the soil, and the leaves affects us. And all these sensations build up a unique sensory experience that's part of that atmosphere. Being quiet and still allows you to open up to those delicate sensations. Now, the benefits of forest bathing have been enumerated in many studies, from reducing stress to increasing high alpha and beta brainwaves to boosting immunity. And while forest bathing emphasizes our five senses, there's a great deal of information exchange that happens at a deeper level than those obvious five senses. Much of what comes to us humans as sensations are things that we're not even directly conscious of, but they do affect us. So replicating the full effect of what a real tree in virtual reality might seem beyond reach, but we could be starting to look at techniques to communicate those subtle, invisible, active, vibrational kinds of elements that serve to move or resonate with something in us. Let's find ways to put that in the virtual tree so we can have a deeper experience. Immersive media currently lacks that. This may be why social VR seems to work for more people, because you'd still have part of the energy of other people with you, even though they are not there physically, but they are there in some way, so you're able to access some of that communication and that connection. So we may not be able to do this for everything, but we do need to start looking at ways to discover how to do this, I think, so that we can add something delicate and transcendent that enhances that subject matter. How else can we make immersive media richer? This leads to the concept of adding more senses to it. Those of you that know me know I'm a big proponent of using sense in immersive media, but I really want even more. We currently do not capture that fullness of experience that we can have as humans. Some things, special, inherent, and critical things, are not digitized yet, so they're not part of these experiences. Some experts claim we have up to 55 sensory channels. How do we get these into a simulated environment? It comes down to what we're prioritizing our work on. Just as at one time with computer graphics, we didn't know how to do ray tracing, we need more research and exploration to figure out how to bring more of our human subtle senses into immersive media. And we need to develop new techniques to bring them in. So we need to stop focusing as much on the tech, start exploring what it feels like and how it can reach more of what it means to be human. What happens in the virtual space, of course, has real effects on our physical selves. Physiological, psychological effects to our bodies, our minds, and our hearts. So let's build the specs and the spaces that speak to those areas so we can make experiences that matter, that affect us, and make us healthier, happier, and wiser. These are the kinds of things people would return to. So when we do that, could this new medium actually be a turning point in our evolution as humanity? What could make that happen? What happens when we start to feel these things in our cells? We remember how powerful it can be. So it could even change our lives and become part of our evolving DNA, making our thoughts, beliefs, sacred holdings, and essences better, kind of like a CRISPR medium for our human being DNA. Let's combine the inherent power in immersive media with these new enriching techniques, some based on discoveries in neuroscience. And there are dangers, but the rewards are exciting. So, again, we've underestimated the brain's plasticity, and I think it's possible that the immersive experience can help us figure out how to evolve in better ways. And I read an article this morning. This was very interesting because this just came across my feed this morning, in how the heart remembers. The heart acts as a morphogenic field archive based on something called the unified resonance theory. Neurons in the heart store identity through something called phase-locked resonance. Now, I plan to look really deeply into this because that was the most exciting article I've read in a long time. So, when will we reach the promise of immersive media as I've been talking about it? Well, as soon as we start to make it happen. Let's find out how. Let's expand it together. I love AI video creation. It's so wonderful. So there are some glimmers of promise, I think, in this area that I've been talking about, and I don't have time to go into all of these because I'm already pretty much at time, but these are areas that are starting to speak to some of this deep resonance that I'm talking about, and I hope some of you have had a chance to try some of these. It's not an exhaustive list, but there's certainly some really great glimmers out there. So in closing, remember that immersive media is so powerful, and it can and will change us in profound ways. And we haven't really started how to design for this vast new medium. We need to explore and discover new methods to enrich immersive media so that we can start to achieve this dream for her. This is my great-granddaughter, and that's the path to the future I want to leave for her. So, thank you.